I'm Ari Melber, and while June can be a slower month in news, there is one ritual recurring every June. The final days of the Supreme Court term where you see the running of the reporters. Maybe you've seen this scene before. The court, of course, it takes its own time, but the big and close cases often spark the most debates and rewrites. So they tend to come in these very last days of the term, typically in late June, where clerks and reporters and new reporters' assistants and interns all come sprinting out of the court, old school, with those key June rulings. In fact, it was late June 12 years ago when the Supreme Court upheld Obamacare on one of its last days in session. When the court first recognized marriage equality 9 years ago, it was a spontaneous group of people you see there who actually came out because you don't know which day the ruling was going to happen, and they filled their front area. That was late June, a monumental case on one of the last days of the term. Or maybe you remember where you were in that otherwise slow week when the court made history. That's our MSNBC coverage there. We were showing some of the same stuff you see in the other footage of at the time. Oh, and I was out there too, along with our team, covering history in the making, recognizing a new federal right, June 26, 2015. So what I'm telling you is every June, no matter who's on the court and which cases are pending, court news in this month of June is usually about the court, about its cases, its rulings, the last big cases coming down, and its work. But not this June. No. This June, as you may have noticed, the big news about this court is the rolling set of scandals. News that's more really about a few justices' mistakes off the bench than the court's actual work. The news is about hidden gifts and MAGA partisanship and rancor and misleading statements about breaking the U.S. flag code. It has been a combination of high-stakes failure and sometimes low-stakes pettiness, with Justices Thomas and Alito, as well as Alito's wife, a figure who is in these stories because he, Justice Alito, loudly blamed her for a flag incident that even he wanted to run from. So now you have these three figures front and center in June. Alito's home, as you may recall, broke the U.S. flag code, flying a flag upside down, and it was at the time of the insurrection. So it was using the same upside-down flag that the seditionists used at the Capitol. And Justice Alito issued this response that managed to blame his wife and engage in this apparently partisan sarcasm and make material misstatements that had been caught by fact-checkers, reporters, neighbors, and now his own wife. Now, the latest tension comes from these secret recordings you may have heard about that were made of the Alitos and others, and they build on the questions about corruption, bias, and partisanship amidst the lavish gifts that Justice Thomas has been taking, which puts more pressure on Chief Justice Roberts to enforce this new ethics code, which apparently isn't stopping these rolling scandals. So that's the whole context. As for the recordings, they're from a progressive activist who engages her suspects as if she is a conservative. So it's not a journalistic or transparent approach, but the answers are the verified responses of these individuals. So I've put this together. You may have heard about this. We've put it together in one sort of big collection, some of the tapes making news.
I don't know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that needs to happen for the polarization to end.
I think you're probably right. I think one side or the other is going to win. It's difficult, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised.
You know what I want? I want a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag because I have to look across the lagoon at the Pride flag for the next month.
Exactly. People in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
Well, those are some of the answers. They suggest a bias right below or at the surface. That's different than what judges are supposed to express, and it's certainly different than how Chief Justice Roberts handled questions from that same activist.
I think the role for the court is deciding the cases. If I start, would you want me to be in charge of guiding us toward a memorial? But that's for the people we elect.
That's what he said to Miss Windsor, the activist, and she just joined our colleague Joy Reid last night discussing these tapes she made of the Alitos.
Throughout this sort of rant, there was a lot of, just aggression and, against the media, getting even.
So the quotes peel back layers on the court. and offer a different explanation for Alito's rulings than his own claims to follow just historical meaning and not just push his own personal views. Now, I want to be clear. There are people who argue that judges are human beings, and if you were to do enough taping, you could find other judges sharing their views, whatever they may be, and the test is still how they rule, not what they think. But these tapes do bring also a whole second problem for Alito, who's facing multiple scandals. I mentioned the flags. The New York Times reporting that the Alito's home flew an upside-down American flag, echoing what seditionists waved at the Capitol during their crime spree, and they were waving this flag and hoisting it for days over their house at that time in January 21. Doing that alone violates the U.S. Flag Code. In the code section on respecting the flag, it mandates the flag should never be displayed upside down with the union down. Alito knew this was bad. He didn't defend it as just his free speech or some sort of, joke. Instead, he claimed it was all his wife's doing. And he claimed that he asked her to take it down and she refused. And he wrote down this defense to Congress saying, I asked my wife to take it down, but for several days she refused. And that he respected her rights, her choices. A line from the author of the ruling ending Roe v. Wade and the rights and choices for other women. So it struck many, him saying that he honors her right to make her own decisions, it struck many as an obviously partisan provocation. Like, no, you don't feel that way about other women, you haven't ruled that way. Now, in these same tapes, Justice Alito's wife says something very different. She says she deferred to him, seeming to complicate this story.
And he's like, oh, please don't put up a flag. I said, I won't do it because I'm deferring to you. But when you are free of this nonsense, I'm putting it up, and I'm going to send them a message every day. Maybe every week I'll be changing the flags. There'll be all kinds. I made a flag in my head. This is how I satisfy myself. I made a flag. It's white, and it's yellow and orange flames around it. And in the middle is the word vergogna. Vergogna in Italian means shame.
Ms. Alito can wave or talk about whatever flags she wants. But she is saying here that she defers to him. And he says she doesn't on the same flag issue. So an otherwise kind of bizarre MAGA partisan neighborhood spat is now raising other questions, especially since she was speaking to what she thought was a like-minded individual, seeming to speak freely and privately. In other words, there's no reason to think what's on tape there is somehow part of some grand conspiracy theory. It seems the more direct interpretation is she's saying what happened and he wasn't truthful. So the questions that are raised would be, was Justice Alito lying? Did he coordinate or change his story after the fact with his wife? Do they have one story for the public that's false and a true story in private? If he was lying, did he intentionally write that lie in an official letter to Congress and intend to submit it as a false statement to Congress? That would be a grave matter for any judge. And we should mention, in some rare cases, false statements to Congress are investigated, even prosecuted, though I should say not typically when you have relations between the judicial and legislative branch. Another question is, what is Chief Justice John Roberts doing about any of this? The Chief Justice already refused a proposal to just meet with top senators about these substantive issues with Alito. But it's clear this isn't going away. Not for Alito, not for the court, and not for Justice Roberts. Indeed, the news now tonight is that Senate Democrats are eyeing other ways to link Supreme Court funding with a mandate that the court adopt an enforceable ethics code. And that approach could provide a path for the Senate to get the court to clean up its act without having to pass a whole new law. We were reporting last week about how Senator Durbin has a bill along those same lines about a mandated ethics process, but that would have to get through Congress and defeat a filibuster and get through the Republican House. So this might be a different way. Now, June is usually a time to be discussing the court rulings, the running of the rulings out in front of the court. And we are awaiting some big ones on insurrection convictions and how to put a former president on trial for stopping the peaceful transfer of power. And honestly, Washington and news viewers, legal commentators, this sort of community of people who care about this stuff would normally be focused on the substance of that. But a small number of judges have repeatedly undercut the court's credibility on those pending cases. And Alito angrily refusing to recuse on either the January 6th case or the other one, despite his home's public solidarity with the insurrectionist sign and his apparent cover-up or misleading statement after the fact, submitted, by the way, to the government. Same for Justice Thomas, who won't recuse, even though his wife personally engaged with people from the Stop the Steal movement, and she lobbied for its outcomes. And Thomas has his separate scandal of his own habit of secretly pocketing millions of dollars in gifts, conduct that would get any member of Congress in trouble. You can see there he has also taken in a lot more money than everybody else over the years. But this is apparently fine on John Roberts' court. So here we are, people with tenure and unreviewable power, whose only job is to exercise judgment and to take the great privilege of their lifetime employment and tenure and benefits and security and all the things they get in those jobs and just be independent and use good judgment. And they're proving they lack it when it comes to how they enrich themselves with gifts that dwarf most people's salaries and their public embrace of anti-American insignia amidst violence and their own sloppy cover-up and misdirection about these flag fights and neighborhood disputes. And yes, I should note, since we're trying to do the facts, part of the facts here start with a fairly silly, baroque, at times petty, political fight in the Alito's neighborhood. To paraphrase Drake, the petty is real. Very real.